Okay, so Hawkeye episode 3. This is complete spoilers from the get-go. So if you haven't seen it, go and watch it and come back to this video. I would say that this episode is definitely an improvement from the first two episodes, which is, I think, a first for the Marvel series, because every other series has started off really good and then gone progressively worse, whereas this has started off bad, and this third episode, which is now the midpoint, seems crazy to think this is already the midpoint, is improved for me. The opening was really great. It was teased quite well in the last episode with that ending. Echo's origin story I thought was really good and emotional. I did get some goosebumps at the end when her dad died. It was nice to see Sam MacLeod, and I thought, oh, this would be a nice little role for him. And it turns out, yeah, it's a very little role for him because he dies immediately after you see him. But he is really good in that nice little performance. The younger version of her was really well cast. It must be her sister or something because they have exactly the same face. So probably the main takeaway from the episode is the whole car chase scene with Hawkeye and Kate Bishop. That was where the episode kind of did really improve for me because that was quite exhilarating and fun. You get a good idea of the relationship between Kate Bishop and Hawkeye, and all the trick arrows were really fun. Obviously, everyone's going to think about the Hank Pym arrow. Does that mean Hank Pym or Ant-Man are coming into this? I don't know. I wouldn't have thought so. It seems too much. Seems like there's too much going on to bring Ant-Man into this. If anything, it proves that Hawkeye and Ant-Man are friends outside of work, maybe. I thought that the purple goo, the Play-Doh arrow, the CGI on that was noticeably bad. I'm not sure if anyone else saw that, but I thought that really doesn't look like it's there at all. That some CGI you can kind of forgive, but that was ridiculous. But it doesn't take away from that scene. I thought it was a well-made scene, and it was a nice long take. I like a long take. So I feel like TV directors now are just going, oh, let's put a long take in something because people will like it if there's a long take. Let's be like Birdman. That leads me on to kind of my main takeaway from this episode, which is that they're really now doubling down on Clint going deaf, and some of the scenes in that, like the scene where Kate Bishop is helping him hear his son talking to him, that was brilliantly done. A really emotional scene, and a lot of the stuff to do with his deafness is good. Some of it's played for laughs a bit, obviously, but I like what they're doing with that, and I'm sure that there will be a really big emotional payoff in the finale. But my one kind of niggle about that is that it seems to have just come out of nowhere. Obviously, Hawkeye is deaf in the comics in some interpretations, so they're bringing that in, and it's cool, and they're giving him more character, but it has just come out of nowhere because it was basically teased in the first two episodes because he's got a hearing aid, but he seemed to be hearing fine for the entirety of those two episodes, but now he's suddenly just basically gone deaf. It feels a bit rushed, but it worked for me, so it's not too bad. And in the conversation they have in the diner, which I will talk about in more detail, they talk about Hawkeye's costume, using and giving him a costume, and that's interesting because Scarlet Witch got her costume in WandaVision, her proper costume, instead of just a leather jacket that she always wore in all the previous films. I would be interested to see what they do with a Hawkeye costume. I think obviously what Kate Bishop draws on the piece of paper is exactly what he has in like the classic Jack Kirby comics. I really don't think that costume would fit this universe. As over the top as this universe can be, it still kind of is quite grounded, and a costume like that would look silly in the context of this world. So I'd be interested to see what they do with that. But again, a bit like the deafness, it feels like they're bringing it in too late because Jeremy Renner's 50 and he looks quite old in this show, and he acts old as well with the deafness, so giving him a costume now seems a bit too late. I feel like they should have given him the costume about Age of Ultron time rather than now, and so the costume could have been passed on to Kate Bishop in this series rather than him getting it now. I mean, I don't know, maybe they're not even going to give him a costume, but it feels like that scene was there to tell us that he's going to have a costume by the end of it, and Kate Bishop will presumably have a better costume than what she has now as well. In general though, that diner scene was uncharacteristically well shot for the MCU. I'm not one of the people that thinks the MCU is bland looking. I think the MCU doesn't need Blade Runner 2049 style cinematography, but it helps. And in this episode they showed it, and it was point of view shots with shallow depth of field, a really intimate scene shot really well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't remember any scenes like that in the MCU before. A very personal scene that felt really good and felt really emotional, and I was really impressed with that. So big props to the director on that one. The sad part about this episode is that it was quite short, and I noticed that when I was turning it on Disney Plus. It is 43 minutes. The other two were episodes before for 5 or 7 minutes longer, and that might not sound like much, but it is. And 43 minutes is just kind of basically 10 minutes over half an hour, and it felt quick, especially when you consider that cliffhanger at the end, which was very sudden and very anticlimactic. So you have Jack Duquesne with his swords to Hawkeye's neck, and then that's the end. But you know that Jack hasn't revealed himself as a villain yet, even though we kind of know he is going to be a villain. We know that in the next episode, that's going to be a conversation. That's not going to be a big fight where he chops off Hawkeye's head. That's not going to happen. It feels like the director thought that we're going to think, oh my god, what's Jack going to do next? It's clearly going to be like I would even put money on predicting that he's going to be along the lines of, oh god, I didn't realise it was you, Kate, or something like that. I really don't think it's going to be a very dramatic opening, and I think it felt very cheap. Overall, I would say that was the best episode so far. I like where we're going with Hawkeye now. Thanks to that really emotional origin story from Echo, I'm invested in her character. I feel like she's going to be a really interesting villain who presumably will turn into a hero because she's got her own show. And I've heard that she is quite closely connected to Kingpin, which I have got my fingers crossed for, because Daredevil is one of the best Marvel projects, despite the fact that it's not really connected. So I hope that becomes a thing and Kingpin does show up. We've still got 3 episodes left, and in those 3 episodes I assume Florence Pugh's character is going to show up, because that was teased in Black Widow, but it feels again like there's too much going on at the moment, and I don't know where Yelena Belova's character really fits into this. I assume Kingpin will be the main villain behind everything at the end, and Yelena will help out taking him down. I did enjoy this episode, and I'm slightly more optimistic about Hawkeye now. Thanks for listening. Happy dating, you loners.